Creating a 3D text effect in Photoshop using Photoshop's inbuilt 3D function is CPU intensive, and that can be very frustrating for someone who is running Photoshop on a computer with low CPU. In this video, I'm going to be showing you an alternative way to create amazing 3D text effects in Photoshop, even if you are running Photoshop on a computer with low CPU. So the first thing we want to do is to create our project. So I'm just going to go to File, and here we are going to use 1920 by 1080, and our resolution will remain at 300 pixels. So I'm just going to take OK. Next thing I'm going to do is to create my background, and I will select here and choose a gradient, and in this gradient tab I'm just going to navigate, and I'll choose an orange gradient like this, and here I'm just going to change the gradient style to radial and increase my scale here to about this, and I'll take OK. Once that is done, the next thing for me to do now is to bring in my text. So I'm just going to select my text tool, and I'll type in the font, the text I want to use. So I'm just going to type in music, and here I'm just going to select everything, increase the font size to something like this. Okay. So after typing our text, the next thing we want to do is to convert it into a smart object. And the reason why we are converting into a smart object is because this effect we are about to learn how to create is fully customizable, meaning you can change the text later, you can change the color, and you can make a lot of changes later. So once we have converted that into a smart object, the first thing I want to do is to double click on this to open up the layer styles, and once the layer styles panel is opened, I'm going to go to strokes, and under strokes I'm going to select this color and make sure it's the same color as the color of the text. And once that is done, I'll increase the stroke size. Yours could be small like this. I'm just going to increase the size to something like this, and once I've gotten that, I'm just going to click on OK. And now once this is created, the next thing I want to do is to create several copies of this text, and it is these several copies that we are going to use to create this extrusion here. So how are we going to do that? We are going to do that by creating several copies. So in creating these several copies, you are going to hold Alt and Shift simultaneously on your keyboard, and you are going to press on the left arrow key several times. So for this particular effect, I'm going to press Alt and Shift together, and I'm going to press the left arrow key about, say, 5 to 6 times. So I'm just going to press the left arrow key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and that is done. Once that is done, I'm going to select the first 5 layers like this, select all of them together, and I'll create a group from them, and I'll come to this first layer, I'll rename it first layer. Okay, once that is renamed, I will now go to this stroke here, double click on it, and change this stroke type to a gradient. And once that is switched to a gradient, I'm going to go into my design, go down to the grays, and I'll choose this particular one. You can use any gradient you like. It all depends on what effects you're trying to achieve. So but for this effect, this is the gradient I'm going for, and I may want to reduce the size of my gradient a little like that. Okay, now click OK. At this point, the next thing I want to do right now is to create a copy of this layer. So I'm just going to create a copy, Control J, and once that copy is created, I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to remove all the effects that I've applied so far. That is, I'll clear the layer style. So this stroke effect is not applied on this layer. So let me turn off the other layer so you see how that layer actually looks. That is how the layer actually looks now. So I'm just going to turn on all these other layers, and now what I'm going to do here is to double click on this layer and I'll go now to gradient overlay, and in gradient overlay I'm just going to choose a gradient, and already I have this pink gradient going on. Maybe I go under the pinks and you see, or purples. Let me choose purples instead. So you can choose any gradient you want. So this is the gradient that I currently have here. I can switch to any other gradients as my design may require, but for this case I'm just going to stay with this one. And once that is created, the next thing I want to do is to add a drop shadow. So I'm just going to click on the drop shadow and open up the drop shadow tab, and here I'm going to click on reset to defaults, and once that is done I'm going to do some modifications. So I may increase this distance of the drop shadow. You don't want to make it too big, so you just want something small like that. Increase your opacity and maybe change the angle a little like that, and increase the size, reduce the size a little, increase the spread, just to do some slight modification. And I think for me, I like what I see already, and I'm just going to click on OK. The next thing I may want to do is to add a little effect on this extrusion at the end. So how am I going to do that? I'm just going to go to this group which we created, which carries the extrusion, and I'm going to double click on it like that, and I'm going to add an inner shadow to it, leave the color on white, and my blend mode, I'll leave the blend mode at hard mix, and here I'm going to increase my distance to something like this, and maybe change the direction, the angle to something like this. And once I do that, I'm just going to reduce the choke like that, reduce the size like that, and I think that is pretty good, and just click on OK. So once this is done, I may now decide to add maybe a shadow layer to this. So I'm just going to double click on my extrusion again, and I add a drop shadow layer here, and increase my distance to something like that, and increase the size to something like this, increase the spread like that, and maybe turn down the opacity a little, yeah, to something like this. Maybe drop my opacity a little, just so it has some kind of shadow in the background. So once that is done, next thing I just want to do now is to save my project. So like I said before, this effect is fully customizable. You can change this text to anything. So how do you change this text? To change this text, you are just going to open this layer, you come right down, choose the very first layer at the bottom here, you double click on that layer, and it's going to open up in another project file like this, in a PSB file like this. So you just double click here, and then you change the font. Maybe I want to type in something else like play, and you note that the part of this Y text doesn't show. So I'm just going to use my crop tool to do some modifications. So I'm just going to increase this like that, and make sure my text is fully visible, and I take OK, and I'm just going to press Ctrl S on my keyboard. Once this is saved and I come back here, you now see that I have my play text displayed here. And if I don't like this color, maybe this color is not matching with my design, I may come here and do a modification on this color. So I'm just going to scroll right up to where I applied the gradient for this, and I double click on this gradient. Can I just come here now, change the color to whatever I may want. Maybe I want a blue color, or can change to whatever color I want. Maybe I want this orange color instead. Can apply that. if I want to change the stroke color, I can come to this other layer where the stroke was applied. Here, just select that, and I go to my gradients and I choose any other color that I may want to apply. So I may just go to purples, for instance, and I choose this multicolor one. So it depends on exactly what you want to achieve with this design. If I'm not happy with the outer shadow there, I will just go navigate to the group on which the inner shadow was applied, and then turn it off. And you see, you can customize this to whatever you want to customize it to. So this is it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to support me by liking, subscribe to my channel, because I do these videos every single week. Thank you for watching. See you in my next video.